Hello, welcome. My name is Ingo Trauschweitzer. I'm the director of the Contemporary History Institute at Ohio University, as well as a professor of history here in Athens. Together with my colleagues, I hope that we can provide in a series of short videos in the coming days some perspective on different elements of the current crisis over Ukraine, which may well result in war, but then again, it might not. And wider questions of international security in the 2020s. My own background as a historian of the Cold War centers primarily on the Transatlantic alliance, and so I'm going to look in the next 5 minutes or so at some of the questions revolving around NATO and the current crisis. And I do this at a time in late January 2022 when remarkable statements have come out just within the last 24 hours. For one, US President Joe Biden has provided a kind of a timeline of assumptions when he said that he thinks a Russian attack on Ukraine may happen next month, that is, as early as the coming days in February. And it is, of course, true that there is a great assortment of Russian troops and military hardware assembled around the borders of Ukraine, as well as on what one might, with some justification, call Ukrainian territory. Yet at the same time, the former German chancellor of some time ago, Gerhard Schröder, a social democrat who governed before Angela Merkel did, has suggested that perhaps this is all Ukrainian saber rattling, which may sound outrageous until you think about Schröder's role as what amounts to the chief propagandist of Russian energy interests in Germany and perhaps more widely in the West. So this speaks to a key issue, though. Ukraine is not a member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. The door for Ukraine is open, and that may in fact be part of what this crisis is about, although others will perhaps point out that there are more local issues, domestic issues, deeper historical trend lines too that one has to take into consideration. But because Ukraine is not a member of the alliance, NATO's Article 5 commitment to defend alliance members who come under attack would not come into play here. And yet, the American position, and also that of NATO's Secretary General, Jens Stoltenberg, has been to make relatively aggressive statements pointing out that Russian aggression in Ukraine, unlike in 2014, will not be tolerated in any form, and that the response in sanctions will be crippling. The thing about deterrence, which this is attempting to do, the prevention of war or prevention of a deeper crisis, is that it is a mind game, and one may come to the conclusion that Vladimir Putin, the Russian leader in the Kremlin, may be more persuaded that the Western response has teeth if it were more unified. And there, while the US and the UK have begun to send arms to Ukraine, while other NATO partners, notably Denmark, have started to mobilize in other forms. Denmark has sent fighter jets to Lithuania, another potentially contested state between Russia and a kind of a wider European edifice. Germany has been remarkably reluctant to commit to much of anything. Its approach has been driven by kind of a historical aversion to threatening the use of military means, historical in the context of the now 7.5 decades since the end of the Second World War. And some have, with reasonable, I think, plausibility, suggested that Germany's future close relationship with Russia with respect to energy imports may in fact also be a critical factor, although it is worth noting that no gas is yet flowing through the much discussed Nord Stream 2 pipeline. So this is about future concerns rather than active ones, if that in fact is the critical issue. What is curious, however, strikes me as curious anyway, is that the position of Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who's a member of the Social Democratic Party, has been quite guarded, while it is his foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock of the Green Party, typically more associated with anti-war positions, who has signaled that Germany ought to speak out more forcefully and ought to signal that Russian action will be countered, will be met, if perhaps unlikely with military force, but with sanctions, as President Biden has noted. And so one wonders if part of the issue here is not that there is still in Germany, perhaps in other European countries, the question how reliable a friend and ally, the United States, in fact is and will be in the 2020s and going forward. That is, in other words, that some of the rhetoric and actions of past administrations, notably that of Donald J. Trump, has thrown bedrock assumptions about the alliance into some real doubt. And while it is fair to note that it has been decades-long festering problems that Trump essentially noted about burden sharing in the alliance, about the US always footing much of the bill and providing much of the security, nevertheless now, this crisis comes at a moment in which the alliance seems particularly tender and vulnerable. So to conclude, if you are in the political science parlance a realist, and you believe that negotiating from strength is a good thing, this is all quite troubling. For idealists, or for those, like evidently Tucker Carlson, who seem to think that Russia is not at fault here and not acting aggressively, this might be a somewhat different matter, but it could speak to a deeper concern within the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And from my perspective, that has been one of the cornerstones of an international order since the end of the Second World War that, at least for European states, has been much more peaceful than most of its history. So I think this is a moment that is quite concerning. And again, I hope that in this short video and in a few others to follow, we can perhaps raise some of the issues and shed some light on what in fact is going on in the moment.